These people love to go to work every day. These people are really good at solving mysteries. These people actually enjoyed science class. These people have excavated more T-Rexes than anyone else in the world. These people are the Black Hills Institute. Come on, the past won't wait. Soli lapidus et aeternum vivant.
The prairie of South Dakota is wild and sometimes desolate. Most of its small population makes a living through farming and ranching.
Hunter from way back, you know, and ever since I was probably 10 years old, and I just love it. It's just it's a fun hobby, and I ran across him, and it was just a lot of bone sitting there.
Stan knew he had found a large dinosaur, and he worked on the exposed parts of it on and off for 5 years. It was a monstrous job. By 1992, he had learned about the Black Hills Institute, an independent fossil company 3 hours away, and he invited their crew up to have a look. Peter Larson, Institute President.
We were honored to have Stan Sackerson come to us for help, and we couldn't wait to begin the excavation. But it turned out that it was a learning experience for all of us. Yeah. Stan was found in the Hell Creek Formation, where the bones are broken up usually into little tiny fragments that are impossible to collect without the proper glues. Now, when Stan Sackerson first came upon this skeleton, he didn't have any of those glues.
I guess about 5 years ago I did do a little bit of work on it, thinking that I could collect it, but I got pretty disappointed with the rock, and these people are digging in the rock now, and it looks like a job to me, so I really do wish them a lot of luck in getting this one out. It's kind of surprising that there is any T-Rexes, and that I would be able to find one at all. Shoot.
The Institute crew started by carefully collecting all the tiny bone fragments that had already been broken away from the skeleton by the forces of ice, wind, and rain. Throughout the entire excavation process, they documented the dig. Actual digging began with the removal of overburden, which is extra rock covering the bone layer. In this case, Stan's skeleton was buried under part of a hill, 12 feet underground. Once the overburden was removed, the crew could start digging bones out. This dinosaur, which was named after Stan Sackerson, proved especially challenging to remove from the rock because each bone was encased in ironstone that created an extremely thick shell. Equipment that could cut through this incredibly hard substance was used carefully so as to avoid harming the bones. Then, to actually expose the bones, careful work was done with small hand tools, including large knives and scalpels. Black Hills Institute is fortunate to have an extremely experienced crew, including Chief Preparator Terry Wentz. His specialty is large, challenging fossil specimens.
Well, I'm digging on, there's a bone here. And then I got a tooth here, tooth here, chevron. We're thinking this may be one of the lower jaws. Because of all these teeth around here, it's a good chance it might be part of the skull, but not really sure yet until we get more definition on this bone here.
Here's
The skull is here. It's broken apart.
Come right through here.
Yeah, they'll probably stand between those guys.
Yeah, nice
This
coal
is
there.
the maxilla, which is the tooth-bearing element in the skull. And it's got one tooth in it, see it? This is forward, this is backwards. The skull itself is going to be here, but it's broken apart.
Thanks to the generosity of the landowners, many visitors were permitted onto the private ranch where Stan was found. The children in Buffalo and surrounding towns were especially lucky to take field trips to the excavation and attend outdoor classes in paleontology and digging techniques. No museum in the world can beat this kind of education.
You can see why they were really monsters that once were alive. Something happened to kill this dinosaur. We don't know exactly what happened to kill this Tyrannosaurus rex. Maybe another Tyrannosaurus rex killed it, or maybe it just died of old age. Or maybe it got sick and couldn't take care of itself anymore, couldn't feed, and then it died. But at any rate, it died and fell into a stream when it died. And it was slowly covered by sand that was washing in the river. It was washing over as the water washed over the skeleton and covered the skeleton. And it preserved its bones. It's a very special time when an animal is actually preserved as a fossil.
Yeah. Can you feel that edge? Right?
If we don't find
That's
it in
what
there,
they used to cut the meat with.
down the hill,
When they bite.
wash too far away. Stan, I think,
Is that what they found?
around here.
This was in this quarry. Yeah.
In fact, kind of work with Stan. So I'd like to
West of Camp Crook, they found one that is probably this long, but with the serrated edge and the dark
It's
like
probably a
that.
T-Rex tooth too.
They thought maybe Allosaurus, the people who found it.
It depends. You can tell by how big the serration is.
They're bigger.
Right. If it's got the larger serrations, it's T-Rex. If it's got the smaller ones, it's probably Albertosaurus.
That's when he first found it. Just
Did
that
they say
right there.
Allosaurus?
Yeah?
What do you do with the dinosaur bones when you get done with them?
When we get them dug out of here, we take them back to Hill City. We have a laboratory there where we will clean the bones. And we're making a new museum called the Black Hills Museum of Natural History. And this dinosaur, along with Sue, the female Tyrannosaurus that we collected at the Bay, will be put on display in that new museum.
In some ways, bone removal procedures have not changed in 100 years. For example, Stan's fragile bones were covered with a protective layer and then plaster. This supported them for the bumpy ride home. But new techniques have made the excavation process more efficient. Today's field paleontologists use superglue to stabilize the numerous cracks in bones, and they generally have substituted aluminum foil as the easy-to-apply and remove layer under the plaster jackets. Up until recently, paleontologists used tissue paper. Before removal, each bone was carefully mapped in place. Large pieces, like this huge section of Stan's spine, were most successfully removed in sections. Here, the paleontologists tunneled carefully under the blocks to be able to apply the plaster jackets, and in this case, pieces of wood for extra stability. Sometimes the bones were removed one at a time, and sometimes in great blocks weighing up to thousands of pounds. The next phase of work for these specimens occurred in the controlled conditions of the laboratory. Once all the bones the team could find were removed, the collectors realized they had not recovered some important pieces, so the site was cleared a bit more for some additional digging. Finally, everything remaining of Stan after 65 million years underground was on its way to Hill City, South Dakota. The careful laboratory work began with separating the bones that were collected in the blocks.
Okay, this is the half of the maxilla block. We just took this apart yesterday. We have one maxilla coming here. As you can see, there's teeth still in the maxilla. Some teeth had drifted out. We have one tooth showing here. And this is the other maxilla still in this block. So we have both upper jaws in this one block, real close to each other.
Progress on the big blocks of bone revealed the arrangement of bones as they were preserved in the ground. To safely and completely access each bone and separate it from the block, the heavy mass was turned over so it could be cleaned from the other side.
Okay, this is a very important block because it contains many of the skull elements that you see when you go see T-Rex in the museums. This block has been flipped over. Darlene has prepared completely the other side. And what we're seeing here is we're just starting to get down to bone now. Here's the nasals, which are on the underside here. We're just starting to see a little bit of the lacrimal here. And then over here, these nasal bones extend all the way across to this side. And some of the anterior skull bones are right here. And then the lower jaw is the pink area you see here, is right under this mound of dirt right there. So it's going to be a little bit more time, maybe another few days before we start seeing a lot of the bone in this block. This has just been flipped over yesterday.
Outside scientists have said that the Institute staff is among the best in the world at the job of carefully removing the dirt from each bone's surface with air abrasive tools and tiny dental picks. Stan's painstaking laboratory work would consume the Institute's entire preparation staff for well over a year. Like a giant puzzle, the skull gradually emerged from the rock. The Institute team was thrilled to realize that nearly the entire skull had been collected. Neil Larson is the team's expert at filling in the gaps left by nature. Having already fabricated replacement fragments where necessary in Stan's skull bones, here he worked on one of Stan's vertebrae.
Recreating what's not there. The white represents the real bones that we have. The brown bones are those that we are now having. This is fun.
The fact that the bones were preserved separately and could be put back together allows for groundbreaking scientific study. World-famous paleontologist Robert Bacher finds that Stan confirms some of his suspicions about T-Rex.
Stan is wonderful. Stan is the best T-Rex ever found. Not quite the biggest, although he is very big. But Stan was blown apart. The head, the skull of a T-Rex, your skull, any skull is made up of many components, 30 or 40, and usually when you find a fossil, some of those components are stuck together, usually crushed by the weight of sediment. But Stan, nearly every bone is perfect. And nearly every bone was found by itself a little separated from its neighbors, so that the Black Hills Institute could clean each and every one of these bones, large, like the maxilla, the bone that holds the killing apparatus, or very delicate, like the bones in the palate. That's the pterygoid, which is almost as thin as cardboard, that bone, bent around itself, full of air and life. And that bone is perfect too. And let's see, if you, oh, it is lit. Look right there. Look right through the eye socket right there. That's a little strut, a little tension member embedded in a membrane that holds the roof of the mouth. Holds the roof of the mouth. The bones around the brain. Very important structurally. Never found before. So with Stan, you can get inside the head and see how it was sprung, where there was tension, where there was compression, the two forces. So Stan is wonderful.
To create a specimen for final display, the Institute carefully mounted the bones. Peter Larson's specialty is in combining science and art to create accurate but beautiful displays.
Each dinosaur skeleton is unique. Like humans, they have their own personality. Things that happened to them during their life, which caused injuries, are reflected in the bones, so that as we go to put one of these skeletons together, we actually use those things, those peculiarities about the skeleton to help determine what the mount is going to look like.
The company has revolutionized the mounting system so that each real bone is unharmed and individually removable. Plus, they have minimized exposed steel visible to visitors.
This is a modern T-Rex.
The final stage in the actual hard labor of skeleton development is the casting process. Here, Neil Larson is pulling an exact replica of a bone from its mold. The real bone is unharmed in the process, but its characteristics are perfectly recorded in the model. In this way, museums all over the world can display and study these replicas almost as well as if they were looking at the real thing.
The casts that are made here at the Black Hills Institute of Geological Research are some of the finest casts in the world. This is a cast of the Tyrannosaurus rex, Stan's lower jaw. We have each tooth poured. This mold was poured just yesterday, so, not the mold, excuse me, the cast was just poured yesterday. But we have here an exact reproduction of what Stan's lower jaw is like.
After 65 million years in the ground, after 30,000 hours of preparation and hundreds of hours of mounting, Stan's original skeleton can be assembled in less than an hour. This efficient process is due to the state-of-the-art steel frame, which securely cradles the bones in position. Stan has become an incredibly important specimen for paleontology, and not only because over 66% of his skeleton was recovered. Today, he is the largest Tyrannosaurus rex skeleton that has ever been mounted. With Stan's help, scientists have been able to take impressive steps in understanding all kinds of topics, including how T-Rex lived, how to tell gender from a skeleton, and even how this dinosaur swallowed its prey.
This is Stan's original skull, and of course one of the reasons we didn't mount the skull on the skeleton is because of its weight. But there's an even more important reason, and that is because this is probably the best preserved skull of Tyrannosaurus rex in existence. And we want to, as scientists, be able to have access to this skull. Now, in looking at this skull, we noticed a number of things, and probably one of the more exciting things is that the way that the bones are articulated or joined together. There are actually slip joints, apparently, here. Now, if we look at the natural world, our skulls are built very differently. Our joints in the skull are very tightly fingered so that our skulls are basically fused into one mass. But it looks as if Stan's skull could actually move. Now, this isn't too surprising because other animals, some reptiles, in particularly snakes, have the ability to move the various bones in their skull. Now, this allows animals like snakes to swallow really big items, like an egg, perhaps 4, 5, 6 times the size of their head. But could T-Rex's head actually move like that? Could these bones actually slide back and forth? Well, in examining this skull, we needed to find a hinge joint which allowed this to happen. And one of the places that we found that actually would allow this type of movement is a joint right here between these two bones, the lacrimal and part of the brain case. And there's actually a ball on the back of this bone that fits into a socket in front of the brain. And we believe that that allowed this bone to move in this dimension relative to the brain case so that the nose could actually lift. Now, what advantage did that give to T-Rex? Well, first of all, you notice that it would be able to open its mouth even wider. It would lift its nose as well as lowering its jaws. The jaws themselves have loose joints, allowing them to expand. And we believe that that allowed the animal to swallow even larger items. But probably another very important thing about that was when T-Rex would bite through big bones, like the leg bone of another dinosaur, it would provide a means of absorbing the shock from that impact.
The eyeball would fit here quite tightly. It was a very large eyeball. Some people have suspected that T-Rex was rather beady-eyed. Not true. The eyeball fits tightly here. You see that curved surface. And there was a sheet of membrane right underneath the eyeball, which this bone was embedded in, the post-orbital. So you can see the size of the eyeball very accurately. It was huge. It was like that. Huge. And if you look at it from the front, you can see that the left and right eyeballs can focus forwards together, giving you depth of field. And if you go into the bones around the brain, the eyeball is actually part of your brain. It's an outgrowth of the brain. It's not a separate organ. And in life, you could take Stan's eye and feel the optic nerve, which would be about that thick, and go back into the bones around the brain where there would be a hole for the optic nerve, and you can see it there. And it was big. This is an extremely visual animal. It's got the eyes of 100 eagles put together, and the sense of smell of 100 bloodhounds inside the maxilla, inside this bone, and beneath this bone, the nasals. are marks for the chambers that house the sense of smell. They're called conchi. And the big concha would be right there. And it's huge. And again, you can, if this animal were alive, you'd be able to feel the nerves going from the sense of smell into the brain. And that hole is like that, right and left. The amount of information going from the sense of smell to the brain is enormous, enormous. So the famous scene, Jurassic Park, the movie, where the T-Rex can't see the kids and can't sense them in the rain because the T-Rex can't see them move. That's nuts. That scene is wrong. A T-Rex could smell you easily. It could hunt you down in the total absence of light. Or, on a bright day, see you several hundred yards away. You can't escape.
Talk about the
One of the useful tools of a paleontologist, and one thing they look for in skeletons like the skeleton of Stan, are pathologies or healed injuries. Now, healed injuries give us a snapshot of a day in the life of something like this Tyrannosaurus rex. Now, as we inspected Stan's skeleton, we found a number of these very interesting pathologies. And one you can see in this rib right here. This is a hole that was punctured in the rib, and the rib healed over it. This, we believe, was actually a bite mark from another T-Rex. One of the things that we noticed when we looked at Stan's skull were the presence of a number of holes that really didn't belong there. One in particular is a hole right here towards the back of the brain case in the skull. As you can see, my finger can go clear through that hole. And what we believe happened was that this was actually the bite of another T-Rex, where a tooth entered this hole and it literally split off a piece of bone here on the top and pulled it away. And that bone was never reattached, but this hole, as you can see, was healed. But probably the worst injury in Stan's skeleton is to the neck vertebrae. If you'll notice, here we have 1, 2, 3, 4 vertebrae. But these two vertebrae right here are actually fused together. And this growth of bone behind them shows that the next vertebra was immobilized as well, so that Stan had a broken neck. But that broken neck was healed. Stan lived through something that broke his neck.
Kirk Johnson is a paleobotanist at the Denver Museum of Natural History. He used some of the abundant fossil plants from the Stan site to recreate the late Cretaceous in a diorama at the museum.
Stan site is interesting because it was full of fossil plants. It's very abundant fossil plants, which is not very typical for most dinosaur excavations, but it's a nice lucky find. And subsequent to that site, the guys at the Black Hills Institute have been paying more attention to fossil leaves and picking up fossil leaves from the newer dinosaur sites. So it's been a really good thing for paleobotany that Stan was covered with so many fossil leaves. And that leads us to the ability to get more fossil leaves and get a better understanding of the flora of the Hell Creek Formation. The Cretaceous Creek Bed diorama at the Denver Museum of Natural History is a reconstruction of the flora of the uppermost Hell Creek Formation, the last 500,000 years of the Cretaceous period. The way we built that forest was to take these actual fossils and carefully build replica models of those fossils. So when you walk into that creek bed in Prehistoric Journey, you are walking into a very accurate reproduction of the forest that the Tyrannosaurus rex Stan would have lived in.
Stan even made a diplomatic visit to Japan, headlining the world's most comprehensive display ever constructed about the life of Tyrannosaurus rex. His tour lasted 1 year and allowed Japanese scientists and children an unparalleled exposure to their favorite dinosaur.
We've already learned a tremendous amount from this wonderful skeleton we call Stan, but science is just beginning to unravel the secrets these bones hold trapped within. Although the original skeleton of Stan will remain here in the Black Hills Museum of Natural History in Hill City, we've already placed casts and copies of these skeletons around the world, in Europe, in Japan, and here in the United States.
Stan also proves that an amateur can contribute to science in amazing ways. Stan Sacrison has now found a total of 2 T-Rexes, and his twin brother Stephen found another.
But Stan has also taught us that we know so very little about this animal. How did they breathe? How did they digest their food? These are questions we're still working on. And as time goes on, we're going to learn more and more about this fascinating animal, this largest of all predators, this animal called T-Rex.
We invite you all to come and learn about paleontology and visit Stan. We're sure you'll love him as much as we do.